I've gone Thunderbirds this evening. It's been that kind of weekend. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hello, Steve.
Good evening. Sharing the platform with you today. What's going on?
This is very exciting. This is I guess it's an on the ball first. Hello, everyone. We're welcome to our live recording of episode number 80 of the On the Ball podcast, which is cracking. So we'll get on with that. We've got Sarah Greaves and Reeve on tonight, which is going to be absolutely delightful. But we're going to do something slightly different, aren't we, tonight, Steve, when we do the actual podcast record?
We are. Do you want to do the big reveal?
We are going to have Steve hosting, and then I'm going to be a panel member, I suppose.
Yeah, we're having our own cabinet reshuffle, aren't we?
We are. We're going to see how it goes. We're going to do it every so often, aren't we? Every few weeks.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how this one goes. I can't promise anything right now because it could be, you could want to pull it all the way back. But yes, that's the plan. That's the plan. Depends
if we're in a complete results not based comfort zone, I suppose. But we won't talk about stuff like that. So that's fun. I'm sure it'll all be absolutely wonderful. We didn't deliberately pick this week. It was just sort of random, really, wasn't it? It's not like I'm ducking out of hosting the pod after the
Watford really bad one.
In fact, if anything, I'm in a worse position now because I'm going to have to actually physically talk about it. I don't really think I've thought this through at all. Are you going to go easy on me?
I mean, to be honest, no. You've given me Man City away and Watford at home, so
that's true.
Oh my gosh, both barrels.
Absolute payback. We'll be going through all the normal stuff. I'm going to try and keep an eye on the comments this week, and we're going to try and make a point of that over the coming weeks, although that will be you, probably Steve, in other weeks. Yeah, but so I'll try and flag them up as we go along, but we'll see how that goes. If not, maybe it'll be better to have a little section at the end. Haven't quite figured it out yet, but one way or another, we'll keep an eye on them all. I'm going to share the recording on Facebook. That will be my plan. And Steve, do you reckon we're good to go? I don't know if there's any themes to ask anyone in terms of what they would like to talk about.
We're going to be talking about, drum roll, the Watford game. So
do we have to?
Yeah, I think as much as we can possibly fit in about what on earth went wrong on Saturday, and maybe a bit on what went right. But yeah, essentially, how can we fix it? I think that's our starting point.
I mean, there's it's almost certainly fixable, completely fixable. We're going to laugh, we're going to enjoy it, and everything's fixable. That's the way I'm looking at all this. All right, well, in that case, shall we go for it?
Ready when you are.
All right then. Well, I hope you all enjoy the record, and we'll see you on the other side. And I mean, I'm not a director, but I'm sure this is going to be absolutely fine. So I'm going to mute myself for starters.
Oh yeah. Get yourself on mute, son. Hello and welcome to On the Ball, the Norwich City podcast that is the first name on everyone's team sheet. This is edition number 80. I'm Steve Sanders, aka at NCFCnumbers on Twitter. Not your usual host, but you'll have to trust me that Michael Bailey isn't too far away. So, it was a chastening afternoon at Carrow Road on Saturday against Watford that saw a lot more questions raised than answers provided. What needs to be fixed first? The defence, the midfield, or the attack? Does 4-3-3 need to get in the sea? Do Norwich City only practice defending on the right-hand side of the pitch in training? Is Daniel Farke feeling the pressure? Will we ever beat Watford again? Will we ever get another point again? And will it be October or November before we call Rosenborg to see if they'll let us have Tetty back as an emergency stopgap? So to help answer some of that and hopefully so much more, I'm joined by a gloriously knowledgeable and erudite panel. First up, you might know him, he's a journalist, a broadcaster, and the Norwich City correspondent for The Athletic, and the actual host of this very podcast, Michael Bailey. Michael, can you explain, first of all, how are you? And just explain to the listeners what's going on today.
Steve, I'm really good, thank you. I almost chipped in earlier, but I didn't figure out how to unmute me in time, so the moment went. I'm good. It's been a long weekend, but a more cathartic day, so that's nice. Yeah. Hello, everyone. We're basically trying something different, aren't we, Steve? Every so often, I think we'll get you to host it, and then I'm going to sit here and talk with you, I guess, and with our guests, and we'll see how it goes. Why not? You've got to mix things up, haven't you? Can't stick to the same thing every time and expect the results to change.
Well, quite no. Someone needs to tell our manager that. No, I feel a little bit like sorry. I'm
only digging. Carry on. It's just a bit of fun.
Yeah, I sort of feel like when I used to have when I used to learn how to drive, and I've got my dad sitting in the passenger seat next to me. So, yeah,
I've just realised how much pressure I put on you on the intro. Thank you for an amazing intro. That was a lot of pressure.
Well, you're welcome. I thought I'd better write something, otherwise I'm never going to be allowed to do this again. So we'll see how it goes. But one thing that Michael is still doing, fortunately, is scheduling our guests. And he's done a blinding job this week because we're going to need some positivity on this pod, I feel. And when you need positivity, I'm setting him up for a fall here. You book Norwich City's most positive fan. It's Talk Norwich City presenter and GIF aficionado as of this season, Chris Reeve. Chris, how are you doing, mate?
Oh, what an intro. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. So happy to be on. And a lot of people will know that I've just done our Talk Norwich City live podcast. So I've actually vented a lot of the anger, a lot of the anguish, and I've piled it all on Jack. He's helped me get over it. And so you are probably going to get a positive me on this pod, which is good news for you guys.
Excellent. Well, I hope you've saved a little bit of the vitriol. We don't have a totally sanitized version, but I'm sure that we can more than make up for it if you haven't. And last but absolutely not least, making her on the ball debut, it's Canaries Trust board member and Norwich City season ticket holder, Sarah Greaves. Welcome, Sarah. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Steve. Thank you. I was super looking forward to coming on tonight because I thought we'd have a really positive, jolly panel, lovely conversation about how we were up to, 11th or something. And it was all going really well, and it would be a lovely evening. We're not sort of there. So lots to go through from the weekend. But yeah, I'm glad Chris is here to keep me positive.
I don't even remember what 11th feels like. I could probably tell you when we were last at 11th in the Premier League. But
has anyone looked at the table? I definitely have not looked at the table.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to look at the table, right? We don't need to know what difference that game made to where we are, right?
I think I'll save it until August 2022. Well, no, actually, that's probably being overly negative. But let's wait until we're out of the drop zone at the very least. Right. That's everyone introduced. Shall we get on with it? And the other new thing about this episode is Michael's done some stings. So Here's the sting by Watford, who won 3-1 at Carrow Road. Emmanuel Dennis opened the scoring with Timi Pukki equalising 10 minutes before half-time. But Norwich City got the Sarr treatment in the second half, with Ismaila Sarr nabbing 2 goals to punish the Canaries for what I think we can agree was a pretty limp performance. Mm-hmm. I would urge you all, if once you've finished listening to this podcast, to watch Michael's post-match verdict on YouTube if you haven't already done so. That is one irate Norwich City fan there who saw some raw passion and evidence. So please go back and watch that. Michael, we'll focus on the individual goals in a bit, but have you had a chance to calm down and to rationalise on the overall performance from Saturday and kind of where that leaves us yet? What's your take?
Well, not really. It was probably today, and we are going to talk about Daniel Farke's press conferences, I know, in a bit. But it was actually after the press conference today that I probably felt a little better. There was something about listening to Daniel Farke this afternoon that helped. I would imagine in the same way that his players listening to him and having a team meeting about it on Sunday probably helped a bit. But before that, not really. No, I think there's been a lot of conversation about how much context there is in the fact that Norwich have lost 15 games in the Premier League on the trot. And I probably am going to have to say the same answer I've said for about 20 times, both in written and verbally since the weekend, that I don't think you can just ignore it because it's the same manager and half the team. That provides a level of context. You've got as much comparison to Norwich at home to Villa and Sheffield United and Wolves in the Premier League. That's about as useful and as relevant as Norwich playing Rotherham at home in the Championship, to be honest, because of the level. So I'm not saying you have to put everything into that, but I think to ignore it would be disingenuous. So I think the Watford game in itself, it was only one game this season where maybe Norwich should have won compared to the other four where you would expect them to lose. But by the same token, a lot of what I saw in the Watford game was similar to the failings of 2 years ago. And that is kind of the issue for me that was really there. But it is still early in the season. We do still have positives in that. I thought Teemu Pukki found his feet a little bit after his goal. I thought Matthias Norman showed a lot of real promise, so there's a really good player there. And Ozan Kabak in a few weeks probably doesn't lose that header right at the start, which obviously sets the game off on the wrong foot. So there is enough to work with. I'm just probably now at the time where I want to see Daniel really deliver that coaching ability at Premier League level, because it hasn't happened a lot beyond the sort of first 5 or 6 games of the first season.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. And I think one thing that is worth noting is the fact that 7 of the 10 outfield players on Saturday were new. So maybe there is a little bit of gelling time to be done there. Chris, so you've just had an hour or so of talking about this. Can you condense that into one short answer? What's your overall emotion right now?
Well, I'd like to respond to Michael's point. I watched his post-match review and read his article with my morning coffee on Mondays always, which is a lovely experience, by the way. I'd recommend it as a routine to anyone. It really helps me kind of zoom out the situation. But I must admit, Steve, I feel as though a lot of, and by the way, you're totally right. If you're in this camp, it's totally cool. I think Farke has possibly had a little bit too much stick. I really do. I believe if we were in the ground for that championship title win, I feel like we would be giving Daniel Farke a little bit more of a blessing than he's been given at the moment. I think I'm not ignoring the results thing over 2 seasons in the Premier League, but I think there's a few things to factor in. The main thing is that we spent absolutely bugger all in the Premier League last time, and we had a championship squad that was botched for the Premier League, and also the recruitment was woeful. Going into this season, he's been given all of the tools in his arsenal to do the job. And although I, in my opinion, fairly criticised Daniel Farke's press comments, I didn't think they were right. And I do think he's had a very poor start to the season in terms of the tactics and system that he's implemented. I do firmly believe that we should be putting a little bit more respect on Daniel Farke's name at the moment. He's gone and won us a championship title with a records point total. And so therefore, I think we need to be a little bit nicer about the way that we're critiquing Daniel Farke at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, Chris is absolutely right. You know, five games into a season's not really enough time to judge a manager, and especially one that's just won the title. But I suppose that doesn't take away from the point, Sarah, does it? That Saturday's performance wasn't great. What was the most worrying aspect for you about the game on Saturday?
Yeah, that's the first time I'd seen them at Carrow Road for an incredibly long time. So I was really excited and happy to get back, and so were the kids. And it was an incredible atmosphere. You know, I'm sure the first 2 games were brilliant atmospheres as well, but I thought the crowd really got behind the team. All stands, the cheering, you know, even when things were looking a bit ropey that first 5 to 10 minutes when Watford were really going after Norwich. I thought the crowd were behind that team and really super supportive of them. Obviously, we went behind, but we dug into it and we got back into the game. I think the thing that disappointed me the most was going into that second half, and it was like we just didn't come out wanting to fight for it at times. It was like, and I appreciate some of the players are still catching up with pre-season. They're still getting over COVID. I mean, Pukki still doesn't look fully fit to me. There's still some issues there. They're gelling. They're trying to figure out the best way for them to play as a unit. But you put those players, some of them, into their national teams, and they don't need the time to gel. Gilmore and Hanley are playing stunning games for Scotland, but they're not sort of delivering that and bringing that onto the pitch. And on Saturday, I just thought that second half, the thing that disappointed me was like there wasn't someone taking the lead of that team and saying, come on. There wasn't that person on the pitch rallying that team to taste that little bit more, to put that tackle in, to do the stuff that maybe is the more dirty side of football and get stuck in. But at this level, that's what we're going to have to do. We can't just play how we want to play and play beautiful football that everybody loves, because we will get annihilated on the break and people will take advantage of it. We have to find that grittier side. And I think Norman has the potential to do it. He looked pretty impressive before he tired. But where was the rest of the team going, what? I'm going to fight for this. We fought for a whole season to get back up here. I'm now going to stick my foot in and I'm going to fight for this. That's kind of, where I was.
I have to say that you're making me think that, we look at Saturday in terms of the reaction and the anger and the passion of it as quite bad. I think I get what you're saying, Chris. And I think there's been a muddying over these few days over, that, because everything I've done hasn't really revolved around, well, Daniel's got to go, or, he's clearly not up to it. But it's about questioning and it's about criticizing what Saturday was, which in itself was not good enough. And that was whilst I was shouting and quite angry on Saturday on my video. The point was it wasn't good enough. You can't defend like that in the Premier League and hope to do anything other than get relegated. You can't do a good job of lots of other things if you just concede goals, because you'll just lose games. So what Daniel Farke has to be is not immune to criticism. And I think that as much as you don't want to include people, generally not you, people don't want to include the the Premier League season of 2 years ago. Well, likewise, then let's not include last season. This is completely different and in its own right. Yeah. So I think it's good that there's the criticism. In a way, having binned off 10 games almost at the end of the Premier League season, maybe it's good that they got booed off, that everyone's like, what, you've just sort of given this in on for the last 15, 20 minutes of it. And that's not good enough, because we're all here, we've done our bit, and you haven't done enough for us. So there's no hope really of them all going away going, oh, well, we're just going to keep losing. It's like at that point you have to react and you have to show the fight. And hopefully that is a good element that can come from it, that, the next time they play a game at Carrow Road, everyone will be, well, that was pretty awful, wasn't it, last time we were here? Let's do something that's much more productive. And I don't really mean the cup game, to be honest, against Liverpool, because that's a freebie. It's more about the Premier League games.
Sorry, go on, Sarah.
I was just going to say, from where I am now, I'd prefer to see a horrifically awful game that we somehow grind out a win or a draw from than seeing beautiful football. Just dig in and somehow get a point on the board. It doesn't matter now how it happens. Find that inner resolve. You're playing for this fantastic club. You've got the whole community and crowd and county behind you. We fought back after a desperate end to the Premier League to have an incredible season last year, which none of us really were fortunate enough to see. So get out there.
And
stick your foot in, do it,
And the beautiful football, because I was looking at this as well, because I feel like the style of play has kind of, it's not what it was either, and it's the first time under Farke that we've had 5 games we've had less than 50% possession, so we don't even have the ball. We can't really defend.
We're not getting the ball.
The fight's not really there, so it's difficult to know what we are as a team at the moment. I just want to talk about the goals, the ones we conceded rather than the one we scored. So first goal, 3 men should be closing the cross down and don't, and 1 player wins a header against 3. The second one, there seems to be a collective lack of tracking, and I do put that one at Norman's door, to be honest. I think if you watch King glide past him. Norman does not go with him, and I hate to use his name, but Ollie Skip I do feel would have been there. And 3 was a Kenny McLean shank and Ozan Kabak standing with his arm in the air. None of them great. Chris, was there one that was worse than the other 2 for you, or did you just feel a sinking feeling with all of them?
Do we have to?
The questions will get more optimistic than this. But,
can I just say, before we go into the goals, I just really need to make a point, because I feel like there's been a lot of talk about the fans, and I really want to stick up for the fans. Sarah, I love that from you regarding your point about how good the fans were on Saturday, and they backed the boys. And what I loved is when we conceded, On the Ball City was loud, it was angry, it was defiant, and I felt we did our job. But it wasn't a two-way street on Saturday, and there's no two ways about that. And I really wanted to make that clear. And also, Michael, I think the criticism point is very important. They should definitely receive criticism after their first sloppy games. Anyway, moving on to the goals that we conceded. Look, all really disappointing. The thing that really, really gets to me is the fact that we are conceding so many from from those wing-back positions, and it's just basic, isn't it? I always hold my look. Maybe this is a defeatist attitude. Maybe this is little Norwich syndrome, as people are calling it. You know what? When you're in the Premier League and someone picks it up from the outside the box and they plant it in top bins, you go, fair play. That's a hell of a strike. But at the moment, it seems like all of the goals, in actual fact, I can't remember a single goal this season. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe the Salah goal for Liverpool, where I've gone, you know what? That's a class Premier League goal. Can't do anything about that. We've not stopped crosses, and we've not been there positionally. I think a big part of that is having to chop and change players potentially. But yeah, Steve, I think it's just a recurring theme, really. It's down that right or left-hand side and cutting in. And there's only one way to describe that defending, and it's been absolutely pathetic. There's no other way of describing it.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that, actually, because I was watching this morning the goal of the month on Match of the Day 2. I watched that back, and I was like, oh, we're normally in this when we're in the Premier League. We're normally conceding. And then I thought, oh, we're not in it this time because all the goals we've conceded have been really bad. And Michael, Chris alluded. Yeah, there we go. That's our first one. At least we're not conceding on goal of the month. That won't last. Michael, Chris raises the point about the flanks. It's quite difficult to tell exactly where the goals kind of come from, which side of the pitch, but I make it 10 from our left-hand side. And I had a little look back, and in context, there's only 4 times in the last 30 seasons where by this point we've conceded 10 or more in total, and we've conceded 10 purely from the left flank. What's happening there? What's the answer? We've played different players, so how do we stop that being an issue?
Well, I think I'd have to really think about this, but I would probably would I suggest that Norwich have played teams where they've had really strong right sides? I mean, certainly Watford are much stronger where Ismail Assar is playing than the other flank. Salah on the right for Liverpool, you could argue, potentially, because Firmino wasn't playing, was he? And then it was Mane. But I think this is certainly a really tricky one on the left, because Brandon Williams is a really dogged, fighting kind of a player, but a lot of the blocks that we all like come from him sort of having to salvage situations, and positionally he does look a bit erratic, to be honest, at the moment. And I think Daniel's got to get a real grip of that. I mean, I was going to mention this later, but I might as well mention it now. I mean, I keep hearing how young the back 4 is and how young the players are, and that doesn't wash this time, mainly because he's opting not to play Dimitris Giannoulis and Ben Gibson for either Kabak, who has a lot of experience, to be honest, and Andrew Omobamidele against Arsenal, and then Brandon Williams. So that's his decision. It's not so if you're going to go with that. And I asked him this actually at Colney today. It's like, well, can you actually stay up in the Premier League, which is the elite level of English football, but also one of the best leagues in the world, whilst also blooding young players who are going to make mistakes? Can you is all of that possible? And he was like, yeah, it's really hard. And I'm like, well, yeah. So we don't know yet. I guess we're going to find out. But so Brandon positionally needs to get a real grip of it, or he needs to play Demetrius, to be honest. And I think, I don't know. The problem is Dimmy never really got the chance to prove that he learned from the Manchester City game, and he got a run out to kind of keep him ticking over against a Bournemouth side that were 5-0 down, which was great to show that you weren't completely dead to Daniel Farke. But what he needs is a testing. He needs to a point that you've got to be tucked in, and you can't let someone just play the ball inside of you for Jesus who's ran in behind. So he hasn't had that chance, and that probably is maybe where Dimmy should have been given another go in the Premier League, to have just got that out of his system and proven it. Because if you take players out who are damaged and then you replace them with someone else and then they get damaged, you've got a damaged player to bring back in. And this is kind of why I felt it was maybe a game too soon for Aizen Kabak, because he's had a struggle. So he's now going to need games to get up to speed. You can't play Ben Gibson because he's still hanging from a couple of games ago when he was ditched. And Andrew Bamadeli could possibly come in, but you are then playing in a 19-year-old who's played 8 senior games. So, and you come back to the same question at the very start. So these are all the fires that Daniel Farke's fighting. Yeah. And he's also fighting them when he's just spoken to us today saying defensive improvement is exactly what we need to do. We need to be harder to score against. So he's got to achieve that improvement, with players who have already learned their mistakes, and improved. We're going to have to see. But ironing out's really difficult, really, really hard. I mean, either the players he picks have got to learn from their mistakes really quickly, whoever they are. And then it's going to be a man management challenge for Daniel to make sure that those players are fully on board and feel able and confident enough to take it on and do it.
Now, Sarah, one of the things to kind of follow on from that is the answer potentially, and this was I know Chris went out and asked questions about how he improved things on Twitter, and a lot of what came back was change the system. So is the system the problem? Is 4-3-3 not working, or would you persevere with it and hope that things come good?
I mean, who knows at this stage, right? I mean, it's finding some formation and some starting 11 that can finish a game in a better position than we've seen so far this season. But I think on Saturday, having Sargent on worked better with Pukki. I think there's been a disconnect up with Pukki, and he's looked, fed up is the wrong sort of phrase, but he's looked disconnected from the team, and he's been working incredibly hard and playing incredibly well for the team, but we've been doing nothing to allow him to even have an attempt on goal or to score. So I think having Sargent there did change that dynamic somewhat, but it created this weird formation and setup where no one really knew who was playing where, and we didn't really have any natural wingers. I know Rashika was on, but he kept drifting in. Everyone's drifting in, but there's no one who's a natural number 10 sort of holding that role in the centre there. I mean, they're all trying to be a bit like Buendia or fill the gap or being a bit like the number 10, but no one really knows how to do it. And I'm surprised Cantwell hasn't been playing more, especially after his stats in the first few games where he had the most tackles in the whole of the Premier League. And I thought he was the natural person perhaps to step in and take that Buendia type role and provide that connection through to Pukki more naturally. So I'm surprised he hasn't been playing. At the Arsenal game that I was at, I thought it was again a strange setup and formation with Dowell out on the wing. It was just odd. So why are we doing a 4-3-3? Is that because we said we would to get Gilmour to sign for us and play for us because he naturally wants to play in that formation? But if it's not working, we've got to be brave enough to change it. And something isn't working. And, the only time we saw Pukki excel on Saturday was that beautiful pass from Norman over the top, which was just perfect. Let's not forget that was really a stunning ball. But there was not that much more other than that. I just want to see them somehow, as my 9-year-old said, I just don't think they're friends yet, so they're not passing the ball to each other. I mean, it's like school playground football, right? You don't pass the ball to people you don't know very well yet, and that was his summary. It's like they're not connecting. They're not yet figuring out how they play best together as a team, even though they're quite talented individuals.
I think we might need to get your 9-year-old on, because that sounds like the kind of that might be summing up what we've talked about for the last 20 minutes in
He was like,
about 5
they're
seconds.
not friends yet.
Save us a lot of time, that wouldn't it? Really. Let's do it.
Sorry, Chris, you're about to add something there.
Yeah, Sarah's homed in on Pookie there, and obviously a great discussion point. We've not got the best out of Timu this season, and Michael used the phrase "there's lots of fires to put out," and of course that's the challenge right now, and that's why I was so bitterly disappointed with the Watford defeat. Is that I feel like we've regressed, because I felt after that Arsenal loss, I know that we had to get more shots on target, but it just felt like one or two Farke tweaks would have gone and won us that Watford game. Mm-hmm. I just think it's not just about getting the best out of Pookie. I feel like we're definitely not getting the most out of Milo Rashica. I'm surprised to see the criticism that he's had, because I don't think we're playing a system that suits him the most. I don't think we're playing balls in front of his feet for him to actually run at defenders like we signed him to do. That's what he did in the German league. I know it's a cut above that. I know he's in a relegation campaign, but we're not playing to his strengths at the moment. We're not playing Zolis, who's our £8 or £9 million player, if not more than that. Great point, Sarah. We're not playing Todd Cantwell, probably our only real proven creative outlet without Emi Buendia. So there's multiple players in this system where we're not playing to their strengths. And Steve, you said I'm not letting Norman get away with that mistake for the Watford game. Well, I must admit I'm going to stand in his corner, because although I think he could have put more effort into track back, I felt sorry for the guy, because he's having to do all that work on his own, and the system, he was just left for dead, mate. The wingers were up. The wingers were up in Morrison's car park, and he was left to do all of the duties to himself. So I feel like there are multiple players that are not having their strengths played to at the moment, which is why I was so bitterly disappointed and worried, particularly with Watford. But again, want to compliment the Leicester game, because although we lost, I felt like just one or two tweaks and we would have gone and won that game. I do believe that. So I don't know what the answer is, because Michael said it. There's lots of fires to put out, lots of fires.
And I think there's even more fires now, right? I felt after the Arsenal game, like you said, Chris, we were nearly there. That's why I felt so positive on Saturday. It was like just that final little thing with the crowd behind them, and then they're going to have got that sort of winning feeling back and found the right starting 11 that will allow them all to thrive. And after watching some of them on TV and then Arsenal away and then at the home game, you just think, what's happened? What happened during the week? Did he change things too much on Saturday? But when we saw the starting 11, I was kind of like, oh, this is a good starting 11. I was the only one I was really surprised about was that Omar Bamidele didn't start, because I actually thought he had a pretty good game at Arsenal, and I thought he would have kept that back four steady to try and give them some time to bed in and actually work as a solid unit. But the starting 11 we looked at, and everyone was on the train was the same. It was like, oh, this is quite a good starting 11,
Yeah, I think there's like the teams that have been put out. I think aside from probably the Arsenal game, I think the fans would have agreed. And I think the team that was put out on Saturday, people wouldn't have had any complaints with. So in terms of personnel, that doesn't seem to be the issue. I will just throw a few stats at you, because that's why I'm here. We all know about the 15 in a row in the Premier League. They've
thanks.
Sorry, none of this is going to be fun. We've conceded in 21 of the last 24 halves of football in the Premier League. That's not great going. It's been 46 games in the Premier League since we last took a point from a losing position. In the games where we've been behind, it's been 46 matches, and we've only scored 4 second half goals in our last 30 Premier League games. The fifth most recent second half goal that we've scored in the Premier League was scored by Dennis Sabeni. So the goat himself, he's still making waves. Can we just before we end this section, are there any positives we can take? The one thing I was going to say is that we have had seasons under Farke where after 5 games, things have looked pretty bad. The Millwall defeat, the 4-0 Millwall defeat, that was the 5th game of the season. After 5 games last season, we were still in the bottom half. And in the promotion season, the 5th game, I think we just drawn at Ipswich. So he does have a track record of turning it around. Can anyone else just kind of quickly before we move on, give us something that we can hang our hats on?
Well, as I said, I honestly think that the reaction is a wake-up call, and it came as much for me. I think honestly everyone will have come away from that and it's like, come on. So I think that that is a positive. As I said, I thought there were positives in Teemu, Ozan and Mateus's performances. I reckon Christos Jolis will be a regular starter before the end of the year. I have to say, I think he looks properly the part. We're just waiting for him to really get the start. So I think that's going to happen. And there's plenty to work with. So in a way, maybe that is one of the things they did learn from 2 years ago, that you can go from game to game in the Premier League and come back. And let's be quite clear, 4 points in the next 2 games or win at Burnley, who are, to be honest, pretty rubbish for this level. Ultimately, they might be better than Norwich, but they might not be. And this will all change the narrative as a dynamic. They'll have won a Premier League game. There'll be something to build on. So it's only ever a spark away, Steve.
Okay, well, that's the positivity I was looking for. And let's hope that Sean Dyche isn't listening to this podcast. I'd say he almost certainly isn't, but pretty rubbish will be up on their changing room walls if he is.
Relatively speaking. I did definitely say relatively speaking.
Okay, thanks for qualifying. Right, well, in that case, if we've not ranted enough yet, I will move this on to part 2, which is our new section called Pick That One Out. Cue Michael.
That's my favourite one.
Yeah, and suitably short as well, because that's what this section is all about. It's brevity. So this is the opportunity for our panelists to spend a solid 30 seconds uninterrupted, letting rip on a topic of their choice. We haven't let rip enough already, have we? So, but this time it's got to be done in 30 seconds. Believe me, it's quite a challenge to keep it down to that amount. So there's probably plenty that we still haven't covered. Does anyone want to go first? I'm happy to mix up the order. I'm seeing Sarah shaking her head. I'm looking at Chris. He looks like he might be smiling. So Chris, we're going with you.
Oh, okay, go on then.
Right, Michael's going to do the timing. So whenever you're ready,
are you going to
go?
Okay. Right, okay. My big thing this week is the divide between happy clappers and skeptics, negativity and not true fans. There's no grey space. There's no middle ground. Where's the empathy? Where's the reasonable debate? Ask questions. Don't make it personal. End of.
Ooh, less than 30.
Like, I'm buzzing you for being so short. So short. So short.
I like one. I'd like he kind of leant back in his chair as if to say, "That's all you're going to get from me."
Wow,
that was my point.
I couldn't show you the chair, by the way. Look at this yellow chair that I've invested in. This
that is an amazing yellow chair.
Quite something, isn't it? Anyway,
is it comfortable?
Oh, it's glorious. Yes.
Excellent. It looks like a good seat to lean forward on, as you're doing right now.
Yes.
I'm going to offer it up to Sarah next. Then you've seen how it's done. You can use the 30 seconds up.
I wish you'd gone first now.
Well, you can do the Chris Reeve mic drop if you want. But are you? Yeah, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's
go.
So my pet peeve this week is about the abomination that is now Captain Canary. What has happened to our beloved fluffy mascot, who looked like he would never win the mascot race ever when they went hurtling over the fences in the races that were happening. Now we've got this sort of psychopathic-looking, demented object representing us. But I sort of put it out there that perhaps he could play in midfield, and that might be the solution that we're looking for.
Wow. You're all getting... No one's doing the time.
I had my little timer going, you see.
I'm going to get angry again.
If you've made your point, then you don't need to go on for 30 seconds. I think that's beautiful. And definitely the first time anyone in Pick That One Out has used the phrase psychopathic demented object. So a bonus point.
Sure.
For that.
That's the kids' phrase as well for the new Captain Canary.
Does this mean we're going to need to get Captain Canary on as like a right of reply, Steve?
Have you not seen him? The way the other one was sort of sacked and rejected out of the changing room was pretty sad. They made a job holding his boots. It was like, yeah.
It's definitely a more streamlined version. I don't know if you can slander a canary, to be honest, Michael. So I think we're probably okay on the right of reply. I'd like to know if it's a new model or a new person on the inside. Do you know what I mean? Or whether it's the previous.
I've person. Always wanted to know who's inside. When I was at uni, I used to know the guy who was inside the Moose at Cambridge United, which was quite entertaining.
I've been inside. I've been inside the Aviva Lima, but I was sworn to secrecy. But I guess
could you describe it, Chris, being inside?
It had a fan inside its head, actually.
Yeah, actually.
So basically, it was either Captain. This was Norfolk Show days when I was at the club. It was either you can be Captain Canary as an apprentice. I just did all the botchick jobs, or Aviva the Lima. No one wanted to be Captain Canary because the Aviva Lima had this modern technology inside its head, keeping you cool. So there you go.
Bring them all back. Wow. Bring all the mascots back.
Wow.
I think we should get whoever's Captain Canary to come on the ball and maybe do like a reveal on this podcast.
Oh, that would be good.
Michael, that would be amazing. Have I got to try and shall I try and sort that out? Okay.
Well, wouldn't it be good
if we stay up? I reckon I'll pitch that.
It'd be good if it was someone we knew, like that Masked Singer program, and Mylene Klaus or someone like that.
It's Ben Mouncer. He
hasn't been on in a while, so. Right, Michael, are you doing one of these?
Go on, then why not?
I have my timer ready. It doesn't have a klaxon at the end, but
go meh.
I'll go meh. Yeah, that works for me. Okay. Well, you've seen how it's done, so I will hand over to you in 3, 2, 1, go.
I mean, I've seen how it was done, but neither of them filled the time, so I think they failed miserably. But I put this in my piece in The Athletic this morning. But what do the Manchester City, Arsenal and Watford games have in common? It's a rhetorical question. I'll answer it. Norwich conceding a goal with defenders putting their arms in the air, appealing for something that isn't going to affect it because they're going to look at it on VAR anyway. Stop it. Defend, deal with what's going on in the pitch, and then react to the ball, all that sort of stuff. And then we'll see if it's onside or offside or not. Oh my goodness, it is absolutely infuriating, to be honest. And I didn't even just final point.
Still going.
I didn't actually get to flag up the point that I created the analytic of expected arms in air in my piece, which I thought was quite a good one. So if Norwich keep their XAIA below 1 for the rest of the season, I think they'll keep a few clean sheets and stay up. There you go.
Oh, very nice. Look at
the graph on that.
I can't even control the podcast host. I think you spent too much time roasting your fellow panel members, to be honest, in your 30 seconds.
I did.
I went over.
I think I used their time, to be honest, so it's fine.
Yeah, that was good. I think all in all, that was probably about 1.5 minutes. So I think we'll take that. Well, thank you very much. Michael, I was going to see if and sorry to put you on the spot, but you did say you might be checking comments.
Yes.
So have we had any good ones before we move on to the next?
Definitely putting me on the spot, but that's okay. Yeah. But let's have a look. I'll read them out and we'll see how we get on. Guy Williams says, hello, Guy. I sat next to the chap who was in Captain Canary for the losing playoff final under Worthy and Cardiff. Oof. Wow. Tough gig, that one. I mean, that is
very hot and sweaty, especially in May when end of May when the playoff final is.
And the roof was shut, wasn't it?
Yeah, the roof was shut.
A sorry occasion, that one, but yet so good as well. James Carter says, "Bring back the Norfolk dumpling." There we go. It's one for our older listeners and viewers.
You don't know the Norfolk dumpling?
Come on, Sarah, enlighten us.
1959 Cup run. The Norfolk dumpling was everywhere alongside the cigar smoking Canary.
59. That explains it.
What? Sorry, was it a walking dumpling?
Yeah.
Why?
Why not?
Why not? There was a big walking dumpling and there was a big walking sort of wooden canary, right? With a top hat and a tail coat, wasn't it? Like a waistcoat and stuff, and had that big cigar that he was smoking. Bring back him.
Yeah, well, I think we've had a few Norfolk dumplings walking around the pitch this season.
Lid. Well, as a result of that, Steve, Gary Allen says, Steve, any chance you can come up with one positive stat?
Oh, wow.
Let's say for maybe next week. Oh, hang on. Chris has got his finger up.
Chris came with a stat, didn't he?
Yeah, and it's a positive one.
Let me in. So I shared this on the TNC pod, so forgive me if you've watched that and you're now watching this as well. And Steve, correct me because you are the stat king. No. Now, the last time we went to Goodison Park was in 2019-20 season. We won 2-0. Scorers, the icon, Dennis Rabeni, and Todd Cantwell. Now, an interesting stat is before that game, we'd lost 7 games in a row before that game. So therefore, I'm clutching at straws, but come on, people, stay with me. Maybe Goodison Park is happy hunting ground for Norwich City Football Club, because last time we went there, we'd lost more games in a row and we won. And we won convincingly, might I add.
It was a great performance. I would add there. In fact, I'll tell you what, we'll talk about it later.
Does it get your blessing? Steve, does that stat get your blessing?
That completely gets my blessing. Apart from anything else, you've dug me out of a massive hole because I didn't have one. You can. Would you like to take over the positive side of the account, and I'll just do the horrendous stuff that just makes everyone miserable?
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you for putting me on the spot, Michael. Unless we have any more questions,
I tell you what, there's one more. There's one more. Graham Fackman says that we are 3 points from safety with 99 points to play for. 4 other teams have not won a game yet, and 2 have only won 1. There are better things to come.
Graham. He was in our last podcast, and he's copied and pasted that same comment.
Good.
It's a good comment.
That's how football content works these days. That's exactly. Graham is a master, and we all salute him. Well done, Graham. Great stuff.
Yeah, we're well behind the plagiarism. Well, that's 2. I'm taking that as a positive stat as well. So there you go. It's 2 for the price of 1. Thank you very much for all your comments. Keep them coming. We've still got a way to go yet. And that brings us on nicely to get that sting ready. Centerfold. I think that one's my favourite, actually. Bit of synth funk.
That's fine.
That's synth funk. I don't know.
A bit vibey, that one, isn't it?
Yeah. We've kind of touched on this already, but Friday saw a fairly extraordinary pre-match press conference from Norwich City manager Daniel Farke. Very passionate and reasonably out of character, I would say. One of the answers that he gave was actually a full 15 minutes and 37 seconds long. That's nearly 3 Bohemian Rhapsodies, and about a minute shorter than it took Watford to score on Saturday as well. So that monologue contained responses about Gibson, Hanley, Rupp, Pookie, positivity, bleeding yellow, and the fans giving 100% support. Some saw it as a passionate war cry. Some saw it as a bit more of a dig at the Carrow Road crowd. So you can take your side, or you can sit in the middle, as Chris would prefer us to have it. We should point out this is only Daniel Farke's second most recent pre-match press conference, as he did one today before the Liverpool game. And Michael, obviously, you were at both of these. But Friday was very different, Farke, wasn't it? Now, what did you make of it? Because you've been to a lot of Farke press conferences, and how did that one go down?
So I think Daniel does this every so often, probably several months. There's a press conference where you come away going, "Oh, okay, that stuck with me," and that can be because he really wants to get something across, because he's stretched a metaphor to breaking point. He likes quite long answers anyway, but. I mean, I timed it at 16 minutes, 40 seconds, his answer. So, but I mean, I don't know, because they might have put a clipped version. I've got no idea, to be honest. I think we all got sort of dragged into a bit of a black hole while he was talking. But what probably interested me on Friday was that there was that one answer that he gave, which covered, it was a monologue. It covered lots of different points. But he kept kind of repeating the same points in almost every answer afterwards. It was a real sticking theme. I think if you asked him now, he might feel that he didn't really get it right, which for someone who's such a good communicator is unusual. But I think he just didn't want the fans turning up expecting 3 points and not really putting, their heart and soul into the game, because he wanted the fans to do that so the players would do it. But he kind of did it in a way that was like, don't criticize these players. And it got a bit preachy to the fans slightly, although he did sort of counter it with accepting why they were doing it as well. And it ended up kind of putting pressure on everything. So when the supporters turned up, gave all the noise, and their team conceded 2 shocking goals in the second half and lost 3-1, and everyone was sort of out of it by 10 minutes to go, I think at the end they were like, well, screw this. We haven't kept your end of the bargain up, which is a debate. But that was probably the feeling for the ones who then booed and took it on. So I think in retrospect, all he wanted was the fans really to get behind them, which they did. It worked, but it just put that bit of pressure on so that when it fell apart, I think it caused probably more grief, and it's put a bit of pressure on him. It's put focus on Daniel. And then today's presser was much more focused. It went on for the same length of time, by the way, sort of more than an hour. And there was a really interesting section where he did talk about the booing, and that was the bit actually where the press conference elongated. But he was really balanced and fair with most of that. But the press conference in general was a lot more focused. I felt a lot more less concerned about getting this message out and just dealing with the questions as they came along. And what it brings me back to is actually all of you Daniel Farke press conference fans will remember, was his press conference before the Swansea game last season away from home, and I wrote a piece after the game. Norwich lost, they weren't at their best, and that before that game he spoke again. It was like a message he wanted to get out. It was a lot about pressure, and it doesn't matter that we've lost 2 games on the trot, and they obviously went on to lose a third, or I think it was two goalless draws, wasn't it, that they hadn't won, and then they lost at Swansea, which was a big game. They got knocked off top spot, I think, at that point. So there was a bit sort of around it, and you kind of felt, well, is Daniel sort of making a meal of the pressure? Is he adding to the pressure? What's he actually trying to convey? And they were fine in the end, but I think that these moments do come along where I think maybe it just doesn't come out right, or it becomes a bigger thing because the press conference almost becomes a part of the performance each week for everyone, and a part of the narrative. So it was probably a rare communication misstep from Daniel Farke, in my view, in the end. Not a major one, but I think it just added to the fallout from Saturday. And I imagine we won't see anything like that for a little while, but we probably will see one again, because that's kind of what happened. But then I'm not standing in the stands, so it would be interesting, maybe Chris, what your take is, because I think a lot of fans felt that he was criticizing the fans, and I didn't really see that from what he was saying either. I thought it was more putting a point of view and defending his players rather than saying, and we obviously had all this at the same time as Pep Guardiola is kind of seen as criticizing the Manchester City fans, so it became a bit of a narrative maybe.
Well, as a journalist, I think you've, and I'm sure you'll understand, you've got the luxury of really feeling the context and, looking him in the eye and understanding the tonality and the emotion behind what he's saying. I just think it was just such poor timing regarding, if you lose those games and players have had stinkers, fans are absolutely well within their right to criticize. And actually, what? Football is at times, sadly, a horrible place to be. You're always going to get fans that don't know how to constructively criticize. You're always going to get fans that, have someone that they really, really dislike, and, nothing they can do is right. But that's part of the game. What I would say is, and someone said this earlier, Chris, you've changed your tune. Yes, I have, because I need to compliment Daniel Farke, and that's okay to do that. Although I wasn't happy with the press conference going into the game against Watford, because I actually felt that it added pressure and actually highlighted Lucas Roop, Timu Pukki and Grant Hanley even more. I think he actually brought attention to it even more. I'm really happy with the way he executed the press conference this time, because it shows lessons learned from last time in the Premier League. One of the things that I banged on and on and on about is the lack of responsibility and accountability, not just from Daniel Farke, the club as a whole. And so I'm so pleased to hear Daniel come out today and really step into the fan shoes and understand the misery that we went through on Saturday, because he's totally right. But one of the things I want to make clear is we all make mistakes. I go on the TNC podcast, for example, and make cock-ups all the time. Stats, facts, figures, players. There was a player that I said we should have subbed that wasn't even on the pitch the other day. So it's like, I'm okay with Daniel making a mistake, so long as that he does what he does in today's press conference and fairly, I think got himself back in the room. I just think, Michael, you're in a really great place, of course, which you'll appreciate, where you can get so much more tone. When fans see quotes on Twitter, we're like, whoa, hang on a minute. No, he was crap. We're totally within our rights to say he was crap, if that's how we feel. I know it doesn't help the team, though, of course. So we all do need to try and be positive. But as you so brilliantly said, Michael, it's very much a two-way street. And on Saturday, unfortunately, he built a rod for his own back.
Yeah, and I guess like sort of Keegan and Benitez before him. If it comes before a victory, then that's great. But if it comes before a defeat, then that kind of rallying cry doesn't look so fantastic.
I love the passion, though. I just must say, I love the passion, because we've not. I do feel last time in the Premier League, it felt a bit like whatever. Whereas what I would say about that press conference is I like the fact that he came out all guns blazing. He just went all guns blazing on the wrong thing. He could have just said, he could have made up one of his fantastic metaphors, analogies about the fans singing loud, right? He didn't need to home in on the players.
Yeah, maybe he needs to work. Maybe he'd run out of analogies. He needs to work on his analogies.
The other thing I must reveal, and it won't be fair. Sorry to take up airtime. This is my last point. The last thing I will say, and it won't be fair to reveal who, but I had a message from one of the players before the game saying it's a must-win game. And so therefore, I do think there's an element of smoke and mirrors with these press conferences, and so fans should take Daniel Farke's words with a pinch of salt.
What do you think, Sarah? Pinch of salt? How did it come down to you?
It was bizarre, isn't it? Because like we're not there like Michael is, and you're just following it on Twitter and seeing all the comments come out. And you're at work, you're checking it out on your lunch break is normally what I do. Have it run on another screen while I'm in the middle of something else, and you sort of occasionally look up and go, "What is that?" Normally it's just like, so and so's out injured, so and so's still recovering from COVID, everything's fine, etc. And on Friday it was just a bit like, wow, I want to go back and watch this one and see what's going on. And I think the fans were going to be up for the game no matter what he said. We all knew that it was a really important game. We knew that the team needed us. The support up until then had been fantastic, and the team had been so close to getting a point in some of those games that I think everyone was behind them, and just they didn't need that extra kind of like, we need all four stand singing, we need to make this a big event. It kind of was like, well, we're going to do that anyway. So that was a bit bizarre. The thing that concerns me is he himself more anxious and frustrated with the situation because he can't figure out the right words to use to motivate his team or his players. And that is what is coming across perhaps in press conferences when it's like that, because he wouldn't talk to his players like that, and he wouldn't, one would hope, try and motivate the changing room like that. But go on such a long monologue about so many different aspects and defend Rupp so strongly and then not play him. It was like this quite bizarre situation.
I have to say, on that point, as soon as I saw how much he heard how much he praised Rupp, I thought, well, he's definitely not going to start tomorrow, because it's usually inversely proportional with Farke. The more he praises you before the game.
Maybe he was trying to take the pressure off the players. Maybe he knew that it was a must-win game. Like you said, Chris, you had a message from one of them. They all knew the pressure was there and was building up. So he was trying to take that away by getting everyone to focus on something else and maybe focus on him and this speech. I don't know.
It did. Sorry, just one quick point. It did surprise me that the amount of defending that went on of the players, because the criticism has really all been online. No one's really been booed at a football match. None of the players have been booed. I think Lucas Rupp's cheer may not be quite as loud when his name's read out in the team than some of the other players, but nothing really. So you've then got the manager talking. I mean, it's obviously the players being affected by social media criticism, but at that point, the players have to manage that, because to be honest, you're playing in the Premier League. There's going to be a lot of stuff. Just you're going to have to cope with it or switch off. So for Daniel to address that as an issue, you're giving credence to what's going on social media, which, to be honest, they, as a group of players and a squad, they should be having no real interest in any of that or dealing with it internally. I kind of feel it's kind of, if you're going to ignore the noise, then that is really it. And so to then bring it up as a point in the presser, I just didn't really understand. I didn't think it was necessary. I thought it made a bigger thing of what it was.
Yeah, I think
a common theme here, which is important, whether it be on the pitch or off the pitch with social media, psychology.
Yeah.
We are so fragile right now. We're so fragile. And I'm sure they've been spoken to about social media. It's tough. I suffer with abuse all the time, right? But, you have to, it's just part of the game. You have to find the strength to deal with it. And I do think psychology is actually an issue. I'm going to say it. And they won't like hearing it, but I don't see any facts or reason to come at me with any sort of contrasting opinion to that. On and off the pitch, we seem fragile at the moment.
But we haven't in the past, right, Chris? I think the psychology and the work they've done behind the scenes over the last few, not the Premier League, but to pick the team up and get them focused again as they were last season. I think the psychology is often pretty spot on. The way they motivate the team, the way they have the tunnel decorated, the changing room, everything, the pictures they take away to away games to make it, your changing room wherever you are. I think they've been pretty good at that. But I agree that right now that seems to be the thing that is missing. Why aren't they believing in themselves and playing like they play for their international teams when they step onto the pitch to represent Norwich City? Why aren't they finding that extra half a metre to run? Why aren't they stopping those crosses coming in? Why do they look so concerned about a ball coming over from a corner or a cross that they're not in the right position and they're not going to try and head it out? It's very strange.
It's when they put their heads down. And what you've described there, Sarah, rightly, are all of those marginal gains which Norwich City have prided themselves on. But they're gimmicks without a psychologist in place. And a genuine question for Michael, because I don't have a clue if we have this person. Do the players have a psychologist?
There isn't one at the club, I don't believe. And I've done a piece with Paul McVeigh about this, because I think most managers and most coaches assume that they have the knowledge and they manage, so therefore they are a psychologist. But not that I know of, I'd have to double check, but no. And you're right. I mean, elite performance comes down to a very small percentage. Really interesting point that Daniel Farke made today, I thought, which was like last season it was fine, because if they were low on confidence, they'd win 10 games and then they'd be fine. They are going to have to be much mentally stronger this time because they're not going to win 10 games. I thought that was very accurate and self-aware of Daniel Farke. But yeah, if Norwich need to find the ways to help the players, be strong through that, whatever it is.
Emma Raducanu's psychologist in, maybe.
Yeah, we'll
have some previous.
We'll have
what a superstar she is,
and it might come down to us needing to win 10 games in a row. Well, I hope that I hope he's not been listening to the last hour of this. If he complains at his next press conference that someone called his players a load of dumplings, then we'll know who was to blame for that one. Let's take a look ahead then to the next week, and this is where I hold on for Michael to find the sting, and this is where we cue Motti.
This is almost fantasy football.
This is almost fantasy football. It's not right now, but it could be. So tomorrow, Tuesday, we have Liverpool at home in the Carabao Cup. Maybe that will be a nice bit of a release from the league. We've scored 3/4 of our goals this season in that very competition, and we're on telly. So, who knows what will happen. And it's a Merseyside double this week because we have Everton away on Saturday. We've already heard about the good omens. So we're hoping for good things. They've not, this weekend they didn't have Calvert-Lewin, Richarlison or Pickford. So could it be a good time to play them? Who's feeling confident ahead of that one?
I mean,
volumes.
I'll go. I mean, yeah, they are missing a lot of players, and I think that should be acknowledged. That it might be a slightly easier task than it was. I think Everton have made a really good start. Actually, Damari Gray looks in fine form, and just exactly the sort of player who probably causes us issues at the moment. So, and I guess we may come up against Ben Godfrey again, but yeah, it's a little bit. There's been a bit of decent work there, Everton, but I think those holes are quite big holes, and Norwich need to show a reaction. The thing that gets me is that Everton have a pretty awful record at home against the bottom clubs. I don't exactly know what that is, but certainly if they've lost games in the last few years, it's been against the team that's been bottom at the time that's arrived at Goodison Park. Norwich being one of them, by the way. So, and maybe newly promoted sides. I can't remember exactly the stat. I'm sure it'll circulate via Opta ahead of the game. So that it was a game I would have taken anything from the game about a week ago, because I thought Everton looked in a really decent place. And I thought it was, Rafa is a great manager. He knows how to affect a game, because he did that against Burnley in one tactical tweak and they went from 1-0 down to 3-1 winners basically. So it's a really difficult place, but if you're missing 3 or 4 starters, any team in this division, that's going to make the task a bit easier. It did for Brentford when they hosted Arsenal on the opening day. So let's hope that this is Norwich's turn, because time to deliver now.
Yeah, and go out there with the belief and heads held high. That's what you've been advocating, Sarah. So do you think that we might see that on Saturday? Do you see any hope of anything there?
I think we have to see that. We have to see that they've had a week. No matter what happens tomorrow night, I think tomorrow could be a tough evening. So let's just sort of forget about that and move on. I think on Saturday, whatever 11 players are out there, they have to go out there and they have to show the pride and determination to play for the shirt and have a good game, regardless of what that means. And if we lose on Saturday, which is likely, could happen, let's be honest, I think we would all take an improved performance with some sloppy errors cut out over, some lovely football where they haven't, they've let their heads drop as soon as we're 1-0 down or something, right? I want to see an improved mentality and fight on the pitch. And the one thing, the positivity here, the one thing that can now go in our favour is that everyone just gets a bit too complacent when they're up against us now, because they just think we're so easy to play against, perhaps, and this is a guaranteed 3 points, and that often can create those shock results, right? I'm sure when Man City rocked up at Carrow Road, they thought this is an obvious 3 points, and it wasn't. So I think perhaps that will go in our favour over the next couple of games.
Yeah, I'll certainly echo that. And Chris, any suggestions that the team might be different? Would you change anything? Obviously, things could change tomorrow with the Liverpool game, but what would you look at differently to Saturday?
Well, I think, although I agree with Sarah regarding that result, whatever it may be tomorrow against Liverpool, I think we have to take it in isolation. Even if we win it, it's not the league, and people won't like that, but that's the truth. We need a league win to change the mood with the fans right now, and it's on them, and we'll be there to support them, of course, but it's on them to prove it and give it to us fans, because the start's been dismal. And I do think this is another opportunity, like Leicester, like Arsenal, where they're coming up against a side that, and by the way, Everton have got some top class players. So I'm not blind or stupid enough to think that just because they're missing 4 players, it's going to be a walk in the park for us, or they're weak, because those players will be wanting to prove a point, of course. And they're at home, and they're more defensively sound under Rafa, and. But I do think I would make some changes. I do. I actually don't know what they are. I'm the most useless pundit right now, Steve, honestly, because I can't work out the answer defensively. I don't know who is right. I think perhaps it's time for Hanley to take a game out. I have to admit, take him out of the magnifying glass, so to speak, as we've called it on this podcast, and potentially but bring in either Big Andy or Gibbo, who for me has been completely overlooked so far since the start of the season. But I think the main thing for me, we must play a more defensive game. We've got to protect the defence. It's all very well and good working on defensive tactics and so on and so forth in training. But for me, we've got to have someone alongside Matthias Norman that's going to bolster that defence. Yes, it won't be pretty. It won't be pretty, but my God, would a point make a massive difference to us right now away at Goodison?
Yep, completely agree with that. Would snap your hand off for a point, but that's the beauty of football, right? We still go into these games, even though everything tells us we're going to lose. There's still that little bit of hope suggesting that we might win. And I'm not a defensive coach, but looking at our left side again, please don't try and Josh Townsend onto his left foot. Stick him out wide. That's where he'll do less damage. Anyway, I think we've talked a lot, so that will probably do for this week's On the Ball, the Norwich City podcast that's debating whether to bother taking the EFL on Quest off their series link. Make sure that you subscribe to On the Ball via your podcast player of choice. It's available free for everyone on your usual player. And we're now streaming the recording of the podcast live in video on Michael's social media channels. So hello to you if you're watching right now. Just search Michael Bailey, The Athletic, Norwich City on your preferred social platform, and hopefully it will show up. Ratings and reviews, wherever prompted, are hugely appreciated. And if you want to get in touch with any questions or topic proposals, sling Michael a direct message on Twitter. Not me. I don't want to see your messages. No, I'd love to, but Michael's probably better. At Michael J. Bailey. Right. A massive thank you to our guest tonight. Michael, that was fun, wasn't it? Thank you.
Worked a treat. Yeah. Great job, Steve. Great job. Never in doubt. Thank you for letting me talk.
Same to you. Chris, thanks very much for coming, mate.
Can you play centre-back, Steve? Because you do such a good job.
You can.
Do I look like I've got the physique of a centre-back?
Cultured.
Yeah, well,
great debate. It's nice to have a reasonable debate without bashing each other like on social media. So thank you.
You won't get bashed on here. That's a promise. And Sarah, what a fantastic debut. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
You're very welcome. We will be back next week. Michael will be back in the chair next week, and we'll be hopefully celebrating a point or two next week. Thank you very much. See you soon. Hello, we are still here. We are still live. We're back for more again.
Chris, quick before he starts stripping or something.
Chris was off somewhere. I don't know where he was going.
Chris has gone to take the bins out or something. But we are still. Hey, Chris is as surprised as any of you listening. We are still going. I mean, Michael wants me to say it. I'm going to say, and we're clear. We are clear. So if you're one of those adventurous types who always listens after our first goodbye, Chris Reeve's not one of those.
Chris, no.
Then you will know that this is the part of the show, Chris, that we like to call Wits End, named after the Highland hero that is Stephen Whittaker. For those new to these parts, then welcome. If the USB has come out of the laptop, that's
Chris has gone rogue. I love it. True Whittaker style.
Help yourself to chips and dips. Plug your USB back in and give yourself a pat on the back as a brand new Whittaker, aka an honorary member of Wits End. This is the part of the show where we go off the beaten track and take on any and every topic to do with Norwich City, and that includes your suggestions, which you can give to us via email at twittikers@icloud.com, or you can use the hashtag Twittikers, TWITTERKERS on Twitter. Just don't explain what it refers to. So I'm going to kick us off here, and I'm free to talk about anything we like. But I'm sorry, I'm going to have another slight moan, and it's about this probably would have been my 30 seconds. But what's going on with the pre-match routine before the game? Like from when the players come out of the tunnel to, and maybe I'm in the minority here, but I do not think On the Ball City should be being sung as the game kicks off. I want it before the game. Is anyone with me on that? Because it feels like it's happening now. I don't want that. I want On the Ball City, and then I want kickoff.
The good thing about On the Ball City at the moment is it's being sung while they take the knee, which is attempting to drown out the Snake Pit, who are currently booing it.
Not all.
So, and I mentioned this last week, and I'm like, you watch Elland Road, the Emirates, 60,000 people, all perfectly capable of cheering a sentiment where we don't want racism. Apparently the Snake Pit does want racism. So maybe I shouldn't get stuck into it. But while it sits there it's not doing a very good job of masking it, I suppose. So your point stands, Steve. Maybe it should be before. When would you have it then exactly? I mean, when would you want it? The players, because you've got to read the team out while they're on the pitch.
I know, and they don't. Where's all the time gone? Because they don't even read the subs out now either. Is it the green yellow army white stripes bit that they're now fitting in? Is that
you've also got to appreciate there's the Premier League anthem, which is awful, and also twice as long as it used to be. It used to be a great little tune, I thought, but the one now is a bit like and it goes on twice as long.
Speaking of tunes, though, the pre-match music has gone up to a whole new
100% agree. 100% agree with that.
of one song and one song only, Zombie Nation.
I thought you were going with the chain, but I'm taking Zombie.
100%. Oh my god, 100%.
I almost looked back at my melodica then, but I decided not to.
Ooh.
But F1's a good point, because we've got the players coming out to the chain, and then there was a whole Lotus video that had the current F1 music, which I love, by the way. It's much better than the Premier League anthem.
It's
amazing for an F1 fan. I was like, this is amazing. I was well pumped.
That's his world, isn't it? Maybe he was involved.
Yeah,
are you a fan? Are you in and behind the chain, Sarah? I feel like that's a step up from whatever we previously had.
I kind of missed all the music on Saturday.
You're still getting into the ground.
I thought what I heard was okay. Yeah, it was not too bad. But I didn't like On the Ball City when I heard it. I wanted it before they started playing.
Thank you. I do have a convert then. That's good.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring something else up as well. We've already had Dennis Sabeni on this podcast, and I thought another favourite of the Talk Norwich City boys, Onel. And the fact that he scored, I'm enjoying. By the way, one thing I am enjoying is watching all our various legends, because I think Stephen scored at the weekend as well. Did he?
Yes, he did. Great goal.
Is he back? Is he at Paderborn? Is that where he's now?
Yes.
Right. Okay, but
with Dennis, isn't he?
With Dennis, yeah. What a partnership that has been rebuilt there. But I liked Onel scoring what was basically a tap in. I think you alluded to this on social media as well, Michael, and then like whipping his shirt off and whirling it around his head, which is what we would all do. And it kind of reminded me of that goal that he scored against Manchester United, which was like I think in like the 89th minute, but he celebrated like he
3-0 down at the time.
Yeah,
3-0 down at the time. I mean, there was a lot of pride, I think, for him in that goal, and he completely understood that. But the Forest, the goal against Forest, it was almost, his shirt was off so quickly. I almost think he had his shirt off whilst he was tapping it in. And all I saw, I didn't see the goal. All I saw was a notification, 72 minutes, Onel Hernandez scores, 73 minutes, Onel Hernandez booked. I was like, well, I know what's happened there. And, at least he kept hold of his shirt, but good on him. Good old Onel. What a man.
I just wanted to, sorry, go on, Chris.
I was just going to say we need more Onel Hernandez's in the game, right? I think football, without sounding Sam Allardyce-y, I think football has become very sterile. Technology, VAR, the washes of money around, multi-million pound players, everything pre-scripted, pre-planned, perfectly press trained. Do you know what? Onel is a brilliant personality. And Michael's right. There was a lot of sentiment in that goal for him. And he was very, 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 very disappointed to have been pushed out on loan. He obviously wants to be playing football, but at the same time, he was desperately disappointed. So I'm bloody chuffed for Onel that he got that goal, if I'm allowed to swear too late now. I think he's fallen victim to actually a slice of
children coming, Chris. It'll be perfect timing.
I think he's just fallen victim to a slice of bad luck, to be honest with you. You've highlighted it there, that goal against Manchester United. No one else was doing anything in the Premier League restart. At least he gave it everything he's got. I'm so pleased to see Onel back playing consistent football as he should be, causing defences problems in the championships. What a lovely personality. That's what football's all about, isn't it? You don't remember the boring players. You remember the
you remember the guy who loves Argos.
He always gives everything right, Chris. And I think even Daniel Farke said that when he was talking about the players that have gone, they've missed some big characters out of the changing room, right? And he was one of the ones that he named. It's like a real personality in there who can add in those words of encouragement, or just tell the young players that it is okay. It is, after all, only football, but it is actually going to be okay. So get out there and enjoy yourself, right? And a decent human being, Onel Hernandez. Yeah, a lot of time for the guy. I was super pleased for him as well. And I thought about, using my Onel Hernandez mug for my coffee the next morning was what I
I love that. What a decision that is.
For the whole of lockdown, which was outrageous. He was on his own on my desk for like over a year, and then I had to go in and get him back.
This is a good discussion point. Like, what after a game do we all have at home as fans where we're like, I'm now going to make a decision based on what just happened. Like, I've got 8 mugs with different players on. You know what? That was great at the weekend. I'm now going to get out my Onel Hernandez mug. I don't know what it I don't think I have an equivalent. But, you might think, I'm going to wear, next time I play 5-a-side, I'm going to wear my Marco Stiepermann shirt because he scored at the weekend. I don't know. There must be something.
I'm not that impulsive, but I do feel like having dumplings tonight now. Like I just feel like going out and buying them.
Dumplings, yeah.
I love that. If anyone has any of those at home in their place, I'd quite like to know. Can I just read out
Yes,
Daniel
yeah,
Atanti's message? Thanks for the message, Danny. Danny sent me this because I think last week, I don't think we did it in Wits End, but we did it in the main pod. We were doing Norwich City star signs in honour of Mark Libra and his 19-second debut goal. Read about that on The Athletic. We had some great ones. I mean, I was still really happy with Gemini Goss. I thought that was actually a high point. But Danny came back with really sad. Listening to the podcast, star sign players, Taurus Martin. Sorry.
Taurus Martin. Yeah.
Taurus Martin. That's all right.
Yeah,
No?
I mean,
Not bad.
I can only think of. Was it on last week? Leo Mackenzie, and I mean that's
Leo
not.
Mackenzie. That's right. Yeah.
No.
Where's Leo? Julio Han was mine because I couldn't work out which one to use the Leo in, so I did both.
I think what we've decided is that it can't really be done. If
No, there's definitely others.
They ain't great, are they? They ain't great unless someone can really pull it out of the bag. So yeah, give us your star signs if there are any, which I don't think there are, and your Norwich City impulses after the game. So yeah, hashtag Twitterkers, TWITTERKERS, and also I want to know best Norwich City celebrations as well. I'm just going to put that out there. If there's any, Onel against Man United is one that I will always remember. But I'm also thinking like Holty against Ipswich. Like he didn't even score. Chris, what you're miming?
Oh,
something.
the moustache.
Well, that was the moustache, wasn't it? That was very famous. That celebration. That was at home. That was the full one, wasn't it? Where he got tangled up in the wire and he went round like that. Do you remember?
Oh yeah, yes, I do.
Yeah, Anel was good. I really liked Tim Close, where the only way I could describe it is maybe a donkey that had just been shot and sort of like limped towards the corner flag, and then he headbutted the corner flag. He didn't really know what to do, and I love that. That's a quality celebration when you lose all sense of control or perspective. You just go for it.
I've got to say that is a better shout than I could possibly have imagined. I completely forgot about that one. That is such a good one. Well, if no one else has got any other celebrations, I will open it up to Kenny Other Business. Anyone else for Kenny Other Business?
Oh, no, I hadn't been thinking about it in advance, so I've let myself down here. This is my big moment to come up with some Kenny Other Business.
Yeah, now you know how the rest of us feel when you ask.
I'll tell you what, one bit of Kenny Other Business was Kenny after he shanked his clearance. He obviously tried to get back, and then he managed to slide into the goal with his head in his hands. Yeah. And I haven't seen the point at which he realised that it had been disallowed for offside, but then also the point at which it was then re-allowed, because that must have been one hell of a 20 seconds for poor Kenny. And we all saw his wobbling arms against Stoke last season with his slightly misplaced back pass. So I hope Kenny gets a chance to make up for that, because I think he'd been pretty distraught by that, and he's a lovely guy. So
yeah. By the way, Kenny, just on the note of Kenny, I thought Kenny up until that moment has been brilliant this season. I was calling him to be the first name on the team sheet. For me, I would much rather see Kenny McLean in there over Lucas Roop. I think he can do more on the ball and off the ball for the team. And I think it's a crying shame that he made that mistake, because I think he's been absolutely outstanding for us this season. Actually, I really, really do. I think he's been actually a bit of a surprise package, if I'm honest. Oh, hello. Good evening.
It's Michael's kids who win, not mine.
Archie's woken up. The first time this has happened in the pod.
Do you know what?
Okay. Go back to bed. I'll come and give you a cuddle. Job done.
I can hear lots of footsteps outside my door. I can see a line of them out there waiting in a few minutes.
As brilliant as that was, that little cameo, it's probably a sign that we've talked for long enough. Guys, thank you so much for giving up I really feel like you've given up your evenings for this. Michael, Chris, Sarah, absolutely brilliant. It's been a pleasure to host this one, and I couldn't ask for a better panel to do it with. So I think, what do we now do? We just say goodbye, don't we? If you all say goodbye at the same time.
Are we actually going now? Yeah,
we are actually going. Yeah, there is no more after this. I promise. There's not a Twitterkers after party.
I'm off to put on my Norwich hat for positive vibes. That's what I'm going to do.
Excellent. Right. 3, 2, 1.
Bye.
That'll do. Everyone, see you next week.
Bye.
They've gone, so it's just us, Steve. But we'll say goodbye to it. We are still live.
Yeah. So it's the bit after the goodbye. Yeah.
We're just going to say that was awesome. Thank you so much to Chris and Sarah.
No, you're fantastic.
And thanks everyone for watching, because we've been going a long time.
We have been going a long time. Bye, everyone. Thanks.
See you next week.
Yeah.